r/ask Reddit. Teachers, what was the worst thing a substitute teacher did while you were gone? When I was a substitute, I got a lot of requested jobs because the substitute pool was poor. One such example given to me was a substitute who would just go to sleep. I barely believed it. Once I was teaching full time. I had a sub come in for a day. When I got back, my students told me that he told them to leave him alone, sat down, and went to sleep. I believed it then. When I was in high school, we had a regular in the pool of subs who would just sleep through every class. He was very popular with students. When I was in high school, had a sub do this. We all left early except for a few kids. One of the kids told us later that when the sub woke up he noticed all the kids that left, looked at the remaining kids and asked them why they hadn't left yet. Great times. I would occasionally give out starbursts to my 4th graders. Beach ate all the pink ones. This is the funniest reply in the thread. Next time OP only left Bean Boozled jelly beans. I was a teacher's assistant while in college. The teacher and I took a week-long workshop and had a sub. The worst thing she did, not letting the kids go potty. It was in kindergarten and she said all the kids going to bathroom were interrupting the class. One girl wet herself. School policy was if kids under a certain age had an accident, the nurse would give them a pull-up, basically a diaper, to wear. The substitute proceeded to make fun of the girl for wear a diaper, calling her baby and such. The little girl ended facing repercussions at home too. It was devastating to hear about. One of my substitute teachers did that to me in 2nd grade. Thankfully it was a Wednesday, which meant my dad was picking me up instead of me taking the bus, which meant he proceeded to ream that lady a new a-hole. It was so humiliating. I was only 6, maybe 7. Don't remember how far into the year it was, but I had long been able to not piss my pants. My dad was very protective and did not take kindly to this sub, making me sit for over an hour at the end of the day, begging to go to the bathroom. Edit. Thank you everyone for immortalizing one of my terrible childhood memories with your gracious upvotes. Not even surprised. It's one of the simplest things to do. I learned when I worked in daycare. If a kid has to potty, let them potty. If they have an accident, don't shame. This lady literally did the opposite. I came back after being gone one day and my students told me the substitute teacher flipped over tables in a rage and was escorted from the building by a cop. What actually happened is that the sub left the room to take a 20 minutes phone call and the kids thought it would be funny to flip the tables over. The substitute then had to flip the tables right side up while yelling at the kids. Then, during lunch, my special ed co-teacher came into my room to set up and caught the sub making out with a student. Turns out she was 18 to his 25 and the 20 minutes phone call was to set up the lunch meeting. The principal then had him escorted from the building by the resource officer. This is why I say having a sub is more work than just coming into school my damn self. Edit. Wrong version of principal. I'll just come do it my damn self. LOL, that's how I see you pep talking yourself when you are wanting a day off but don't want the drama. Pardon my ignorance, but my ESL brain does not understand what she was 18 to his 25 means. Lol. Edit. Thank all 50 of you all for explaining. LOL. Gave out snacks I bought with my own money that I kept for kids who stayed after to get tutoring. Threw out a broken electric pencil sharpener that kids broke in front of her, which again, I bought with my own money and couldn't get replaced by the company because I had no product to send back. I still don't have a sharpener for my room. Let the kids go through my things in my cabinets and desk. Lost a bunch of stuff that way. Hey 29 Mick 152. Amazon delivers all over the world. Where can I send you a pencil sharpener? Edit. Thank you all for your Reddit acts of kindness. You all cleaned out that teacher's wish list in an hour. How wonderful you are. Edit. List is empty. Open bracket. Only gift cards now for snack and PPE replenishment. I had a teacher Amazon list. So many of you gave what you could. I'm so thankful, and when my kids finally are able to come back in January they'll have something closer to normal to start with. I started the week by taking out a payday loan and debating with my husband about postponing or skipping Thanksgiving this year. Open bracket. Completely unrelated to teaching, but still sucky. This brought me a much needed lift. If you wanted to help me out, please check out Donors Choose or clear the list to pay it forward to other teachers. Thank you all so much. I'll post again as I receive things and get my classroom set up for our hybrid return. Asked a deaf kid to take off his hearing aids. Kids tried to tell her he needs to them, but to her they look like headphones. She cried when was confronted by another teacher. When I was in 6th grade I fractured my wrist, but it was my dominant hand, so I had to poorly write with my right. Teacher forced me to write with my left while I had a cast. I couldn't even grasp the pencil. Cried a lot. Then a couple months go by and got my cast off. Sub told me to suck it up and write with my left. Hours after getting my cast off, I felt like jelly and intense pain. Teacher was fired at the end of 7th grade because of unnecessary complaints. Edit. I should have realized this was a teacher's question, not a student queue. This is considered my first post that I really thought wouldn't get noticed, and now my inbox is full of messages. To clear some questions, I would never steal someone's story, and both stories are very true, but probably be something similar you have encountered before. Also, the teachers should know how to treat students in any situation whatsoever. If teachers really hate their jobs, don't include kids into it. I remember crying asking my mom, why does my teacher pick on me or make me do things I couldn't do? My brother had a PE teacher who requested he run with a torn Achilles tendon. She was probably older than the Achilles the tendon was named after. Similar story from when I was 14. My performing arts teacher got shitty at me for sitting out of dancing lessons when I injured my knee in PE class the week before. I had a brace on and crutches. She thought they were props. Sure, my parents dropped $300 on medical equipment just so I didn't have to waltz. She also didn't believe my doctor's note because I have crappy, scratchy handwriting, so she thought I wrote it. She dragged me to her office and was all like, I'm gonna call your father, and thinking she was calling my bluff. I'm in my 30s now and my knee still aches sometimes. But every time it does I smile, remembering my dad ripping her a new one for interrupting him at work and wasting everyone's time when she could have verified I'd legit gotten hurt by talking to my PE teacher. Accused a student of stealing something that the aide had put away. This was a class that contained some pretty rough students, including one suspended multiple times for fighting and some gang members. She decided to go after a sweet, petite girl that never caused trouble and was generally popular with her classmates. This set off the entire class, which is when the sub went ballistic and started wildly throwing accusations and yelling at said students. Security eventually got called and took several students out. My first clue was when the sub got my cell number from the staff directory and went off for 20+ minutes about how bad my students had been. This was followed up with an extremely long email and a 2-page written note on my desk, plus a concerned note from the administrator about not having appropriate sub plans. She didn't follow them in the first place and decided to throw me under the bus. The next morning when I arrived at school, the students were waiting for me at the door. Once I got them calmed down enough to tell their side of the story, we had a discussion on how they could have handled the situation differently. I promised them never to get that up again. On a related note, I had a good relationship with said rough children because I treated them with respect and fairness. They usually behaved for me. On a side note, it's insane how easy it is to get even the most crazy of individuals like a normal human if you just treat them with a bit of decency and respect. I was homeless for a while, but I had this sort of immunity to getting targeted by bullies because 1, I was friends with everyone, and 2, if I had something I shared it, so there was no point in wondering if I was hiding something. I wasn't. I had the same experience in the psych ward. There's not a lot to do in there, so you may as well listen closely and figure out where someone else is coming from. There was one guy who wasn't eating, just waving his hands in a slow dance around his food, and even though the staff had some idea as to most patients' diagnoses, they couldn't get him to eat. So I asked him questions and treated him as a whole person, and I figured out that there were certain foods for which his ritual didn't take so long that his food got taken back. I forget what foods it was, but I talked to the staff and got him specially prepared foods for every meal, and boom. He only danced for like 20 minutes and still got fresh food, so he ate more regularly and more often. Left my perfectly prepped and neat desk an absolute disaster. Did not follow the lesson plan and took my gel pens. I had a sub steal my dry erase markers and emergency chocolate once. After that, I locked my drawers and left them with 2 pens and 1 dry erase marker. Edit. Today I learned how many people don't know what emergency chocolate is. It can be for you, your work friends, or in my case, occasionally also for students who are having a tough day and might be cheered up a little by some chocolate. It builds goodwill. Go get yourself some, and make sure it's the good stuff. The mixed bag of individually wrapped Ghirardelli squares is my recommendation. It's a small portion, and just one of those feels like a treat. Not the emergency chocolate. This happened to my colleague, but I was the classroom next door. My colleague was showing Clash of the Titans at the end of the year after a unit on ancient Greece. There is mild nudity at the beginning and the end of the movie, but they were in the middle of the movie so there shouldn't have been an issue. He left the video paused at the right spot. We still had VCRs like 10 years ago when this happened, but the sub somehow managed to show both the nudity at the beginning and the end of the movie. The nudity scenes were hours apart and the class was only 40 minutes. Then, the sub wrote an email to the principal about how my colleague made him show nudity. That's phenomenal. I actually had a similar incident with the sub and the Clash of the Titans movie, though I was a student at the time. Apparently our substitute didn't know that there would be nudity in the film, so when the topless woman breastfeeding popped up on screen, she sprinted to the front of the classroom to try and physically cover the TV with her body. Catholic school LOL. Woman shrugging. A history teacher of mine was showing us a movie about the French Revolution on the overhead projector. I guess she suddenly decided that a movie about people being guillotined was too gory for us and tried to cover up the projector screen with a piece of paper. It just projected the movie onto the paper instead. There was a harpsichord in the front of the classroom used both for demonstration and performance. Not knowing what he was doing, the sub tried to tune 3 notes that had gone mildly out of tune while I was away. He managed to break the strings on all 3 notes and left a message inside reading, "Sorry about that." There was a secret harpsichord at my university. Not to everyone obviously, but most of the music majors didn't know it existed. I was teaching myself piano at the time and played the wheels off the bad boy after discovering it. If I could have strapped it to my car, I would have taken it home after spring semester. Now, I've heard there was a secret harpsichord that lonely scene test played, and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? Didn't do anything to the kids, per se, but told the kids that the reason I was out was because my mom was having breast cancer surgery. I teach K5 and I specifically didn't tell the kids because I didn't want them to worry. So, when I came back, I had a bunch of kids come up to me asking about my mom, which was so sweet, but not something the kids should have had to worry about. Now that you said that, with all due respect, how is your mother? Is she doing okay? She doesn't want us kids to worry about it. Rearranged my room, not in a move student A away from student B and put her by student C way, in a move the giant rug over to the opposite corner of the room, and completely change the layout of student desks, and rearrange a bookshelf way. Okay, this is the weirdest one. Like, the other ones are explainable as the subs being a-holes, but this, just, why? I've had teachers temporarily rearrange rooms for activities. It never seemed a big deal to me, but I've also never been in a classroom with a rug. Lost more than half of my textbooks that I purchased myself, as well as textbooks that were school property. Administration just shrugged at this, until they found out that textbooks belonging to the school were around $120 each. Also lost all the book assignments of 4 classes I asked him to collect so I could correct those at home. Kinda sucked for the students who did put a lot of work on it and didn't have digital copies. Also didn't teach anything that I asked him to because he didn't really like the subject matter. Also didn't bother grading. When I checked the grades he had given out, there was only 1 grade and everyone was given 8/10. Even students that didn't take my class. How do you manage to lose a bunch of textbooks from a classroom? More like left with them in his bag. I have known a guy do this as a substitute. He bragged about it on Facebook that he left with 30 textbooks that would cost him £65 each. I reminded him, while ceasing in the school and the local police, that what he did was theft. He is no longer a teacher. She let the kids run wild and do whatever they wanted. First graders, I was out because my dad died. Thank God my team realized what happened and all pulled together and cleaned the room, put it back together before I returned to work. Not a teacher but the sub made the handicapped classmate who has muscle, joint and vision complications go grab his textbook from his home room. He's not completely helpless, but when it comes to heavy things, he needs help. Classmate's homeroom was halfway across campus and the required book consists of 5 large text volumes because they're specifically made for his poor vision. He can't wear glasses either due to complications. I offered to help because I'm usually the one that goes and grabs it for him during normal class, but the sub yelled at me saying he knows my kind and I'm just trying to get out of class. Sub told me he's not there to play games and for me to quit it before he sends me off to the principal's office. Needless to say, the entire class was shocked. Classmate came back with another student from the homeroom requesting that next time the sub send someone else to grab the books because my classmate can't carry it by himself. When my usual teacher came back, we requested the sub not return because of what he said to us and did to classmate. My teacher wrote an email to the principal about it and that was the end of that. I had a few teachers like that. One yelled at me in front of the entire class for not having my textbook ready to turn in at the end of the year and threatened to make me pay for it when the book was at my house, where it was supposed to be, because I couldn't haul my textbooks back and forth. When I meekly reminded him of my 504 plan, he acted like it was my fault he forgot, as though I had hidden this fact from him the entire year. Edit. For those who don't seem to get it, I have disabilities. This wasn't just oh my teacher was mean or he whoops I didn't have my book. This was a teacher who decided to ignore the fact that I am visibly disabled and instead belittled me in front of all the other students. I had this one sub that yelled at the whole class for being too loud when all that was happening were the chairs moving. Not a teacher but in 9th grade my algebra I teacher had her baby early in the year, so she was gone till the last month or 2 months of the school year. The sub was a former teacher, so you'd think she'd be a great sub. Nope. She hyper focused on 3-4 out of the 28 students in the class and just teach them while completely ignoring the rest of us. She'd pass out a worksheet, then go to her students and never acknowledge us again till she dismissed us. Never checked homework. Never acknowledged us. If anyone outside of her favorite students raised their hand or spoke up, they were ignored, etc. Which went about as well as you expected with a bunch of 14-15-year-olds. That class was just wild. The kids who actually stayed in the classroom anyway. It was a mess. I'm actually surprised we weren't reported or visited by the teachers on either side of us for how loud we were. After several months with this lady, the vice principal was walking around randomly checking classrooms and walked into our shit show algebra I class. He lost it, yelled at all of us to sit down and shut up, open bracket, which she also didn't acknowledge. Demanded she leave and sat with us the rest of the period. Never saw her again and had maybe 6-7 different subs after her. 2 weeks after this our regular teacher came back. When she realized we had learned nothing and learned the extent of how useless this lady had been, she started tearing up. I passed the classroom on the way to the bathroom during the next period and saw her sobbing at her desk. A friend of my mom's worked at the central office where they assigned or organized the substitute teachers. That lady was permanently taken off the substitute list. Ducking hate teachers like that. Serves her right. I felt so bad for my algebra I teacher. She basically had to teach all of us a year's worth of math in less than 2 months while also dealing with a class full of kids and who were used to doing whatever they wanted. Ironically, the 3-4 the sub focused on ended up scoring the lowest on the end of year test. Just to add to this, I was friends with one of the students she focused on. He said she was a horrible teacher and made no sense whatsoever. Said he'd rather she just have ignored him too and couldn't for the life of him figure out why she liked him and the others so much. Had a substitute teacher in my high school French class show a movie that was straight up softcore pornography but tried to explain that since it was in French it was artistic. It was equally frustrating because while I wanted to see boobs, I also couldn't stop reading the subtitles because I had to understand what they were saying. The teacher did not come back the next day. Update. I went through all the comments and looked at everyone who suggested what movie it might be and none of those movies were the one shown. This would have been in 2006 and the movie looked maybe late 90s or early 2000s. If I come across it, I will update this thread, but for all I know it could have been a porno in French. Sir, Do you plead guilty to indecent exposure? None. I plead guilty to being artistic. I had an English prof do this my freshman year. I went to a Catholic university and my first semester got a lesbian English professor who screamed, without warning, a French movie in which everyone was naked for no reason that was thinly wrapped around a Shakespeare play. I loudly laughed my ass off for over 10 minutes when the opening credits got to a part where a topless chick was jumping up and down on a trampoline facing directly into the camera, as one does, for literally no reason other than boobs. The entire situation was so absurd I couldn't stop laughing. Edit. Somebody found it. It's Prosperous Books. And she had a jump rope, not a trampoline. Link to the opening credits. Not a teacher, but a student with a story nonetheless. Meet Mrs. Hostess. Fake name of V. Every time my 8th grade history teacher was out, Mrs. Hostess would usually sub for him. Not sure why, because she subbed other classes too, but all the incidents of note happened when she subbed for history. There happened to be a girl in the class who shared a name with an Irish folk song. Every time Mrs. Hostess took attendance, when she got to folk song girl, she sang the whole song. Every time. The history teacher kept candy and snacks in his desk. Lollipops that he'd hand out for correct answers or just because. Some leftover Halloween candy. And the Twinkie. The Twinkie was not an ordinary Twinkie. The Twinkie was an experiment in processed food. This Twinkie was still in its original individual packaging and looked normal at first glance, but was actually 3 years past expiration and rock solid. The history teacher demonstrated this by standing on the Twinkie during one of the first weeks of classes. All said to say, "This is a thoroughly inedible Twinkie." So Mrs. Hostess subbed again, and we knew she discovered the lollipop stash because she was openly eating them during class. But it wasn't until the next day that our history teacher opened his desk drawer to find that the Twinkie was gone. This woman ate an expired, solid Twinkie as well as literally all the food candy in the teacher's desk. A girl in the class who shared a name with an Irish folk song. Poor sweet Molly Malone. Probably, but I like to think her name was Danny Boy. Not a teacher, but in the 4th grade, our teacher had a baby and was gone for several weeks. The sub we had was an absolute witch. She had no patience for kids. She'd yell at us for stupid shit, ask us questions and or give us homework that was way above our tiny 4th grade brain levels and then complain and call us stupid when literally none of the kids did well on the work. One girl decided to get smart with her one day and she walks over and slaps the girl hard across the face, which of course sends the girl into a hysterical sobbing fit, and says that's what your horse of a mother should be doing more often, being tiny. Adorable 4th graders. We were all too afraid to tell anyone. We had to deal with that for 3 weeks until the main teacher came back. New parental fear required. I don't think kids these days would stay silent about this. Back when I was a kid in the 80s and 90s, we knew our parents would assume we were lying, deserved it and side with the teachers, but these days there's a much stronger culture of kids knowing their rights and that adults can't touch them. Back when I was a teacher, I had a sub decide my plans weren't good enough for her and went rogue. She decided to show my students videos of animals giving birth on YouTube. I taught English. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.